what else is like? They might say themselves as one against us that
forces them to come out and forces that become visible for people to come to their aid. We're saying that that is a sad reality that we have to expose.
You're opening it up.
Yeah. Oh, I just chose the nearest place to sit.
That's obviously the best place. Thanks.
Ooh. 135, 135. So,
Yeah.
and then closing off in 135. 135? That's fine.
Oh. Who's speaking first? Opening go?
Edwin.
Opening up?
Nicole's first.
Closing go?
Alexander.
Full spins. Full spins?
Yes, we are.
Good. Who's speaking first?
Oh.
Ooh. These rollers. So fun. Right, without any further ado, can I invite the Prime Minister to take the floor and to speak to the motion that will stand in his name. Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, we once dreamed of an internet where anonymity would be able to give us many freedoms that were not afforded to before. The ability to speak as an abstract entity or to take another persona would help us express ourselves in new ways. Unfortunately, this is not what is manifested itself. We find that the depth of online discussion is very shallow. We find that wherever we look to comment threads, forums, news sites, Twitter, and games, we find that people are much more likely to engage in ad hominem attacks rather than engage in real discussion that goes beyond what would happen in the real world. And this is because people are able to hide behind this mask of anonymity. And we'll go to show how our proposal will change this. So like, assuming it's possible, obviously we didn't have to like define a model besides going into very broad scope, but like, just to make 2 clarifications, we define this to like Western liberal democracies to give it a clear context. And we also define this model by clarifying that if you're an organization, if you're a registered organization, you can still keep talking as an organization. You don't have to put your name down as an individual within that organization. So what are the reasons? What are the reasons why our model will provide real gains to improve online debate? Firstly, it will curb abuse. Now, nowhere else in the world can you reasonably say what you want, whatever you want, like regardless of the consequences, without expecting to be potentially subject to A, legal accountability, and B, the judgment of your peers, who will enforce whether what you say is in line with social values and not abusing those of others. Now, what is particularly bad about online abuse that happens in this context? Because this abuse, like, the vast majority of the time happens from abstract anonymous entities towards real people. It means that like anonymous people can always hide behind this mask. It doesn't have to be subject to these real world limitations, which would kick into place under our model if people were able, would have to put their identities there, therefore empowering their peers to examine who they are, why they're saying these things, and moreover, police them so that they don't harm people in the process. And how does this abuse from anonymous entities to real people, from anonymous people hiding behind anonymity to real people work? It hides behind dehumanizing the other party without having to be reflexive on your own humanity, who you are, what it is that brought you to that debate, what made you interested in that issue. You can say whatever you want about the other party and expect to somehow get away with it. I'll take it after this point. And what also makes this abuse particularly pernicious is that it does not reflect real world dynamics. It does not reflect the kind of power that your particular voice has in the world, because you can be one person but appear as 20 different people on an online forum. And furthermore, as I have stated, you don't have to be reflexive about what it is that brings you to that forum. And who are the people who are victimized by this form of abuse? We see racial minorities, we see gender and sex minorities, we see people who have any kind of fringe views that would be opposed by trolls and the underprivileged groups of society. And I'll take you now. Yes.
Okay, are you also opposing to writing in a journal, for example, in an anonymous name?
Thank you. Well, we find that occasionally there are instances outside the internet where anonymity does occur. However, we would like also, we believe that this proposal would also encourage people to further curb these instances by showing them how much benefit there is in creating real identities online. And furthermore, these are much less accessible and carry much less harms in the real world, as I've proposed. And it is of a completely different scale. That's my second argument, that it forces more concrete and nuanced public discourses. It forces people to be reflexive about their real world situation. What makes them interested in that issue? What parts of their social circumstances, their upbringing, their economic circumstances make them hold a particular view and set them against others online? What have we seen in the internet so far? Like this terrible phenomenon of trolling, which allows people to say things that they don't believe in, that often they don't believe in, or that they wouldn't be able to fully commit to if they had to like write their name, stake their identity against that view, simply because they can hide behind anonymity. We see this most likely in Gamergate, where like anonymous entities have gone to the support of this spurious party defending the right to free journalism online. And we find that in situations like that, where women are minorities, we're more likely to be victimized. They're also the people more likely to hide behind anonymous identities when they are being victimized, sadly. However, we think that under our model, this wouldn't necessarily prejudice those groups who decide to hide behind these identities because they're being victimized, because it will also curb abuse. But also, where people decide to reveal who they are online by entering the online sphere, as our model would propose, it would also force minorities to defend themselves. And what this would do is, by having people online, by making the abuse visible, by seeing where people's prejudices stem from the fact that someone is black, where someone is a woman, where someone is transgender. We would allow others to come to their defense and to actually build a solid shell around which those people can enforce courtesy, can actually create a civil online debate. This leads on to my final point, which is that this squarely, this educates the public on how to achieve a balance between freedom of speech and basic courtesies, as well as rights like freedom against discrimination and abuse. And we find that often what the attacks that happen online are ad hominem, and the forms of trolling which people are not fully willing to commit to, which prevents people from developing the kinds of arguments, the kinds of engagement with public discourse and real issues that we would hope that they would have, especially in an age when identity is so goddamn important. And by doing this, it would also mean that in other forums, people might have to reveal their identities, and also forums where people don't have to reveal their identities, like journals. It creates a culture where people will weigh their views against their social circumstances, understand if their views are held like that because they're privileged, because it gives them some ideological benefit. And by doing this, it will improve debate not just online but in other areas, and make people much more wary at attacking minorities, where this is overstepping both like their moral and legal boundaries. And so, because it will curb abuse, because it will force a more nuanced and concrete public discourse online and empower minorities to defend each other where they might have been previously aware of doing so, and because it will educate the public on the balance between freedom of speech and freedom against abuse, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
I invite the Leader of the Opposition to take the floor. Sorry? Oh no, it's right. No, we're right. It's fine. Go ahead. Thank you.
We think that under our side of the house, we have more discussion and more a better discussion, and I will show you my points. First, why principally it's wrong to harm such significant harm to the freedom of speech, and secondly, why we have less of a discussion. So first, we heard about the fact that we have legal occasions, like people are going against other people, that they are individuals, and etc. So we're not talking about criminal stuff, right? Because we say that if you have hate speeches today, or talking something that is falsely bad on a politician or something, you could already today have details, and this is not the cases that we defend. We support the fact that if someone did something criminal, it's okay to know who he is. But we say that in the other cases, in most of the cases, we will have much more of demonization of people. Why? Because now, when a certain minority expresses his opinion online, I can say that he's thinking this opinion because he's a minority, and this is illegitimate to say this stuff because he's a minority. And for example, if I see someone Muslim that is defending his religion or another Muslim state, for example, I will automatically link that with the fact that he is Muslim and not with the fact that he's a person, he has a legitimate opinion. Moreover, we think that people that today are dehumanizing people won't hesitate to do it under the current model when they know who is behind the thing that was written. Secondly, we say about the fact that we have the journalists that write in an anonymous way. I will talk about it in my point, but we say that we want a broad range of opinions in our society. And it means that if we give people the opportunity to say what they wouldn't say otherwise, mostly in most of the cases, this is a good thing. Because we say that the extremist people will still say what they have to say, even if they're identifying themselves, but the moderate people that has opinion that should be discussed won't do that, and I've explained my point. Lastly, about the fact that minorities has to defend themselves, right? So first we say that we don't want people to influence and criticize my opinion because they know who I am. We want people to read the content of what the other person says and address the content. So if you say it affects somehow of how I get the information, we agree and we think that this is a bad thing. Secondly, we say that it's more likely that minorities will feel pressured and oppressed in this internet sphere and will less defend themselves because they feel they're a minority also there, and lastly, I would say that the majority is, or experienced people are more likely to really read the content if they don't know that someone that they oppose on a personal level is writing these things, right? So no, my point, okay? Why is it, in a principle level it's very harmful? In the principle level, okay? We say that today the internet is a very basic tool in order to be part of our society. It means that first my friends are expecting me to be part of the political discussion or discussion about rights and stuff like this. And moreover, we think that we feel free to like express ourselves, and it makes us more part of our society, right? More involved in our society. Okay. So as an individual, I feel that part of my identity is to express my opinion in the global sphere. Okay. So we say that today, when I post online, I know that people, like when I post to Facebook, for example, I know that people knows who I am. This is why I will be more careful in saying some things, even if they are true, even if these are opinions that might be legitimate or arouse discussion that is good, okay? But we say that in Facebook, for example, I know that people that wants to hire me, for example, are looking in Facebook and see my political agendas and etc. We know that the government is looking and see what I'm writing and etc. We say that the ability to express my opinion without being attacked personally is something that is very important in order to be active part of our society, because it enables us to really stand for what we believe in without the feeling that we are being harmed. And because the internet is such a substantial arena, it's exactly like giving people the option to write to the newspaper in an anonymous name, okay? So we think that this is very important in order to feel part of the society, and if you take this tool away from me because I won't write if I need to identify because I'm afraid of the consequences, we think that this is not proportional harm of my freedom of speech. Before I go on to the second point, someone? Yes?
The vast majority of public expression is carried out in a sphere where people do identify themselves, and in fact it is a sophisticated public sphere where people have been happy to express their views for so long. What is so special about this particular set of fora and games that you're defending?
Okay, this particular arena is not controlled by people with interest and money, and this is very important. It brings me to my second point. When we have this beautiful arena of the internet, once we didn't have it, okay, so we had a problem. But today we have the opportunity to hear a lot of opinions, different opinions, new opinions, challenging opinions, okay? We think that this is great. We think that if you take our ability to express ourselves in this arena, so if I have opinions that are controversial, I'm less likely to expose myself and say this opinion. Or, so I have two options, right? Maybe I will just give up my opinion, and we think that this is very bad because we need people in the society to challenge us with their own opinions. It brings a better discussion, and it challenges my own logics when someone is telling me differently, like in a debate, right? Because I need to explain which link in my opinion is correct or not correct and why. But moreover, we say that some of them will transfer their opinion to someone else to post it, right? Who is this someone else? Someone that is more extreme than me, that is not afraid to put his agenda before his personal life. We think that those extreme people are the people we don't want to lead the discussion. Why? Because we think that someone that is politically involved in an extreme party, for example, and does not care to post the same opinion, will post it in a much extreme framing, right? Phrasing and framing. And secondly, this person would be less open to the other opinion, meaning the discussion itself will be more shallow, as you explained in your problem. To summarize this speech, we think that principally we should have the ability that you're taking away from us to express ourselves in a media that is very significant in our life today. But moreover, we think that in order to have a good discussion in our society and to have more opinions, we need this to be not disclosed. Thank you.
I now invite the Deputy Prime Minister to take the floor. Yes, right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay. I want to offer some rebuttal, reiterate the importance of some of the points my colleague made, and then offer some extending, some more arguments as well. Now, first some points of rebuttal. We heard a lot about how this will curb freedom of speech. Now here, I think it's important to make a distinction we've already made, but has been either misunderstood or intentionally misrepresented by the opposition, and it's this. We are setting this motion, or this motion is set in the context of Western liberal democracies. This means that censorship, like in these contexts, like meaning the real meaning of the term, as in governments curbing freedom of expression, already doesn't exist. We already have the protected institution of freedom of speech in all these countries. So to suggest that publishing your identity online would curb freedom of speech is, at least in this official capacity of censorship, patently not true, because that's an entirely separate issue, one where, yeah, in Western liberal societies, we already have the institution of freedom of speech. Now, the rest of my rebuttals, I think, will be integrated. We've heard a lot about how anonymity encourages diversity, etc. Here, I just want to restate why the negative effects of anonymity that we've outlined far outweigh those supposed positive ones. We've seen that rather than diverse viewpoints being encouraged, they are in fact shouted down on the internet. I mean, part of this comes from the makeup of the internet. It is still primarily populated by young white men who engage in a lot of abuse that we've discussed against women, against minority groups, and they don't have to take responsibility for their actions. They can dehumanize their rhetorical opponent. They cannot be held legally accountable, and they cannot be held socially accountable. Now, this leads me to a further point of rebuttal, or rather a point of contention against the opposition. They have said that with a situation like this, there'll be a chilling effect. You'll moderate your own opinions. I want to illustrate why this, again, doesn't entirely hold water. All throughout human history, like we've said, there hasn't been an arena where you can voice any opinion you want at any time with no fear of consequences, no one knowing who you are. There's always been, and as a sort of societal glue, something that's held societies together, there's always been social pressures from your peers. We agree that the government shouldn't use its extreme power to oppose you, but social pressure from your peers has always existed, and prevents some of this horrific abuse that we see online. I'll take a point.
The fact that it will always happen does not mean that this is a good thing. If we have a possibility to get the moderate opinion and challenge one another, we want this possibility, and you show no harm for that.
Thank you for your point. This actually leads me into some of my further rebuttals and further points of contention. We've heard that the other side of this would be that while it would make trolls, abusers more visible, it would also make minorities more visible and vulnerable. Here is how I wish to dispute that. Right now on the internet, yes, a lot of people are anonymous. A lot of people already post publicly, sometimes because they have to professionally, it's part of their job. And a lot of these are minority, members of minority groups or women. And they are already subject to horrific hate speech, threats of rape, murder, all this kind of stuff, from people who are anonymous, who cannot be held accountable. So the difference that we would make essentially is, yes, more minority groups would be visible, but the other difference is that their abusers would suddenly be visible and held accountable as well. And I remind you, again, Western liberal democracies, hate speech is illegal, threats of rape are illegal, threats of murder are illegal. All of this would be stopped. You cannot seriously suggest that even when facing legal prosecution, these trolls would still just say the same thing. This to me is absurd. They would be legally prosecuted because we know their identity, and because, yes, in our societies, these things are already illegal. And we've seen this, and you can make the direct analogy, in the regular public sphere, people say horrific racist things, like recently Donald Sterling in America, and public shaming show that his opinions are no longer acceptable on the internet. This previously isn't possible. I'll take your point, sure.
Saying that immigrants are bad for my economy is not calling someone to kill them, but it is an opinion that I might not express if I won't be able to be anonymous. And this is important for our discussion.
Let me just reiterate that right now in our society, you are free to express that opinion, and people do express those opinions. The difference is this is not a threat of murder, of violence. There's a clear, huge difference. Sure, I don't like that claim that much. It's and some people might not, but this falls into the regular public discourse. And even though in the rest of public life, where there's no anonymity, people still say those things anyway. So you suggesting that anonymity is the only reason that people say these things, clearly it doesn't entirely hold water, because again, right now in society we have people who voice unpopular opinions. We have free thinkers. Sure, there's some like things they deal with in response. Like when I say certain opinions, I accept that I may not then be friends with people who have like radically different ones. But why would I be friends with people that I have like such vastly sort of vast differences with anyway? I most likely wouldn't in any case. And one more thing. We've heard about in points of interest and as well later on about journals and other forms where anonymity is possible. But there's another crucial difference, and it's this. Journals and these sorts of things, newspapers, where people can publish anonymously, are still moderated. They're still a legal entity, and the editors, at the very least, and the companies that own them, are legally responsible. Okay, so let me just sum up what I've said. I've restated that the case of our side is about it is said in Western liberal democracies where the values of free speech are already protected. I've said that these ideas of public shaming have good effects. They stop abuse. They stop this kind of stuff. Like social pressure from your peers does this. And even though it already exists in the real world, it hasn't had the negative effects that the opposition have tried to portray that it does have. So once again, because it would curb horrible threats of rape, horrible abuse, it would promote public discourse, teach the value of free speech, and deepen the public discourse as well. I am happy to propose.
The Deputy Leader of